Hello culturally curious and welcome to the Wick, where we're here today at the Hayward in London checking out Danger Came Smiling, the major retrospective of multidisciplinary artist Linder. Her work charts a 5-decade journey from 1970s Manchester punk scene to the present day. Let's take a look inside. So I wanted to start with the title of your exhibition, Danger Came Smiling.
The title originally came from a magazine of my grandmother's, and we're talking now about early 1980s, but the time that sentence really jumped out at me, that idea of the juxtaposition of danger and smiling. There's a lot of pressure on women especially to always be smiling, to never be complaining. The print media that I work with, the magazines and the books, I mean, the oldest imagery is from probably the very, very beginning of the 20th century, right up until today. So I'm quite purist, photomontage, cutting up photographs and gluing them back together again.
And this exploration is often between light and dark.
Yeah. I think if you go back to childhood, any of us, and you start reading fairy tales again, from an adult perspective, you'll see that fairy tales emerged in pre-literate societies globally, often told by the grandmothers to the children to warn them that you don't speak to the stranger in the woods, etc. So I think going back to fairy stories, that darkness is already encoded.
In terms of the women in the work, or the individuals and figures in the work, who are they?
Most of the women, and there's also queer imagery. Of course, they never have names. If you look at Playboy, mainstream publications, quite often it will be Trixie or Susie, or then sometimes it gets exotic model from wherever. As the jazz musician Don Cherry said, exotic for whom?
So you were born in Liverpool, but you spent a lot of the work-making time in Manchester.
Yes. So Manchester at the time just had a very, very, very good reputation for design. I wasn't interested in being an artist. Nobody I knew then wanted to be an artist. Art was seen as quite uncool, unfashionable, but design was seen as something, it was quite a new discipline. I think it had only just been given degree status. So I wanted to do design. Manchester had a very, very good reputation, so I went there. And I was very lucky in my third year to start mixing with young groups who were just, we didn't even have a name. We could now call it punk, but at the time it had no name. We didn't know what was happening. We knew something peculiar and gorgeous and fascinating and was happening, but there was no name. And when there's no name, you can't pin something down. As soon as you have a name, in this case it was punk, which is an American word, we were all like, are they talking about us? As soon as you have a name, in a way you're more traceable. So for quite a long time I was in Manchester, and then for the last few years since the pandemic, it's been quite a nomadic time, and I really like that. I really like that sense of the body becomes home.
Yeah. And do you see all of your works as sort of marks in this journey?
My present self looks back at my 22-year-old self who was making those photomontages in the 70s. Yeah, I just think how heroic that younger self was, that I would go into, whether it's a pornography shop filled with men, and of course as I went in, all the men would be getting out, even though they were looking at images of women. If a real woman walked into those shops, they'd all scurry out, and the owners of the shops would hate it because of course they'd lose their clientele. There's this idea of the breadcrumb trail that I think the artist you leave for yourself as well as for others.